Thomas Jefferson's presidency begins and immediately changes a lot of things that had been going on before him for the last 12 years and would continue on all the way into the 20th century. For example, have you ever noticed that sometime in January, particularly if it's not an inauguration year, the President of the United States seems to be on every channel? This is what's known as the State of the Union. It's an address that he is constitutionally mandated to do so. Article 2, Section 3 basically says that the President of the United States shall from time to time report on the State of the Union. Well, before Jefferson, the President of the United States would actually give an address to Congress. And then, but with Jefferson, that changes. Rather, what he's going to do is he's going to write down his message to Congress and send it to Congress. Mainly because of the fact that he's a poor speaker. He's a much better writer. And as I said before in an earlier video, he only gives 2 speeches throughout his entire presidency, his first and second inaugural addresses. He's also going to do some other reforms. He's going to eliminate internal taxation, and he's going to slash the military. But before people accuse him of being anti-military, he is the President of the United States that establishes the United States Military Academy at West Point. But it's one of the things that happens under his presidency that's most remarkable, of course, is going to be the Supreme Court case of Marbury versus Madison. So let's talk about it for a little bit. First of all, when you are appointed by the President of the United States for any position, the appointment is not delivered by the President himself. Rather, what he would do is he would give it to his Secretary of State, and then he would go and deliver it. So we saw in the earlier lecture that Adams is appointing these midnight justices, these last-minute judges to fill in these last-minute federal judiciary spots. And what happens is that there's going to be a stack of papers that are going to go straight to the Secretary of State's office. The problem is that the Secretary of State's office is pretty much vacant because John Adams had just appointed his Secretary of State, John Marshall, as the new Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So when on Inauguration Day, 1801, when the new Secretary of State, James Madison, comes in, he's going to see a stack of papers, a stack of appointments that have all these names for federal jobs. And so what does he do? He calls up Thomas Jefferson and says, hey, what do you want me to do with these? And Jefferson says, get rid of them. Well, one of those people that are getting rid of is going to be a man named William Marbury. Marbury knows that he's been appointed Justice of the Peace in Washington, D.C. And so when he doesn't get his appointment, he's going to start asking questions. And in fact, he is going to sue James Madison as the Secretary, in his capacity as Secretary of State, to make him explain why Marbury did not get the job. And so Marbury's going to look in his Judiciary Act of 1789, and he's going to see that there is a clause in it that allows the Supreme Court to bring in somebody like Madison and explain himself. It's called the Writ of mandamus. Mandamus means we command. And so unlike every other court case that we are going to be talking about in this course and others, Marbury versus Madison starts at the very top, rather than working its way up from state courts and lower federal courts working its way up. This one starts directly at the top, and so Marbury is suing Madison to explain himself when it comes to why he did not get the job. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Marshall, is going to have to make a ruling, but he has to do so very carefully. You see, Thomas Jefferson is going to wage a war on the federal judiciary, finding any sort of petty excuse he can find to get rid of them and appoint Republican Party judges. And not to make matters worse, Marshall and Thomas Jefferson are feuding cousins. All families have them. They basically have 2 wings of the families, distantly related, and they're always feuding. While Marshall is going to be one of these family feuds with Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson doesn't like Marshall for a number of reasons. One of them being the fact that he's a Federalist from Virginia, and so Jefferson's going to think he's like a traitor to Virginia. So Marshall has to be very, very careful when it comes to his ruling, and he does make a ruling, and it's one of the most important in American history. And here's what he says. First of all, he's going to say that Marbury was duly appointed to the position and he's entitled to receive it. However, his approach to getting it is the wrong way, because the Supreme Court does not have the jurisdiction in the case, since it's only an appellate court. He's going to look, John Marshall is going to look at the Judiciary Act of 1789 and say this writ of mandamus, it violates the Constitution. It says that the authority to issue writs of mandamus to public officers appears not to be warranted by the Constitution. So here you have a Federalist taking a very conservative type of interpretation of the Constitution. And so he says that this writ of mandamus clause within the Judiciary Act of 1789 violates the Constitution, therefore is unconstitutional, and judicial review is now going to be a major feature of the courts. We now have the function of the federal judiciary within the federal government.